Okay, welcome to episode 49 of the iPad podcast by MaxFuture.com. This is Lex at MaxFuture.com, and today is April 10th, 2011. And, well, there hasn't been a lot of crazy iPad news going on, but let's go over what's new in terms of iPad stuff, and it's all kind of interesting. Okay, so Apple may have some big news coming up this week, maybe on April 12th. And the big news may concern Final Cut Pro, which is a high professional application for the Macintosh. Now, what could this possibly have to do with the iPad? Well, let's get into a little background. Final Cut Pro is essentially the Big Daddy Pro version of the iMovie. Well, iMovie is really just the weak cousin or the consumer cousin of Final Cut Pro, and professionals use Final Cut Pro, and anybody who takes movie editing seriously uses it, and it hasn't been updated in terms of its user interface and other features for quite some time, and some people thought that Apple was allowing it to flounder. And there's a rumor now that Apple is going to launch a new version of Final Cut Pro, which is going to be revolutionary, at the NAB conference in Las Vegas this coming week on Tuesday. And the rumored venue, this is according to MacRumors.com, the rumored venue for the launch is a Final Cut Pro user group super meet on April 12th. And the early rumors claim that several speakers and sponsors have been shuffled around at the last minute to accommodate Apple. And, well, according to MacRumors.com, the new version of Final Cut Pro could be very revolutionary, and they compare it to how Wayne Gretzky would play hockey, which is he would skate to where the puck will be. And so nobody knows exactly what Apple is going to, do to change Final Cut Pro, but there was some discussion among the people who use Final Cut Pro in the users group, and one of them, someone named Rudanis, is quoted in Mac Rumors as saying the following, and then he goes on to say, again, I can't speak specifically, but I think the rest of the time here will be very interesting. File-based workflows, Thunderbolt, iPad, competition, it's a moving target. So somehow Final Cut Pro is going to have something to do with the iPad. So what could that be? No one knows exactly. Here's some guesses that I have. One, it'll make it much easier for this movie editor to export and edit movies that are compatible with the iPad. But the other thing is, I could see the iPad being integrated with Final Cut Pro in the following way. One, maybe there'll be a Final Cut Pro iPad version, something beyond iMovie for the iPad, that integrates with Final Cut Pro on the Macintosh, so that you can edit some stuff on Final Cut Pro on the iPad and then save the project and have it work with the Pro version on the Mac. Now, we already see Apple doing that in the sense that you can export iMovie projects and they open up an iMovie on the Mac, and you can export GarageBand projects on the iPad and they open up in GarageBand. So one thing that Apple could do is have a Final Cut Pro version with more features than iMovie currently has and have it integrate with Final Cut Pro on the Mac. That's one thing. Another thing is maybe the iPad will become a form of controller that will be sort of a good editing controller for Final Cut Pro on the Mac. We've already seen a number of third-party apps that turn the iPhone and the iPad into a external touchpad controller or a mouse or a touchscreen for the Mac. But maybe there'll be an app that is like the controls, because you can buy right now for the old version of Final Cut Pro, people make dedicated hardware with knobs and sliders that control Final Cut Pro. I guess you hook it up through USB or FireWire to the Mac. Well, what if there was an iPad app that Apple made that was the Final Cut Pro controller for the Mac? So you could maybe put the iPad next to the Mac, and maybe it'll just have some sliders on it and other controls like a jog wheel that make it easier to control Final Cut Pro on the screen. So those are the two things that I have in mind as to how, well, actually there's three things. One is the ability to edit very easily MPEG-4 and other formats that are very compatible for the iPad. The ability to have a Final Cut Pro app on the iPad that exports to the Mac version of Final Cut Pro, and the ability to control Final Cut Pro on the Mac through some sort of Final Cut Pro controller. Those are my three guesses. We'll have to see if I'm right. Okay, so charging your iPad, let alone iPhone, might soon get very interesting. Electronista.com has a story that Energizer, you know, the people, I guess, who make the batteries, is coming out with a charging pad and an iPhone case that allow inductive charging. Now, what is inductive charging? Inductive charging is, you know, where you don't have to put like a hardware connection, like a plug to charge a device. Like you wouldn't have to plug a USB cord into the iPad or to the iPhone. Inductive charging, it would mean you would just rest the iPhone or iPad on some sort of metal flat panel, and just through resting on it, it would charge it. And according to Electronista.com, inductive charging is theoretically the holy grail for convenience. And so anyway, so apparently Energizer is working on something called the charging pad, and that once it's plugged in, there are lights to tell you which of the two plates are active. And Energizer, according to this story, says that the plates are direction independent. You can put a device on a plate at any angle and it will work. Perfect alignment isn't necessary either, although the big QI logos serve as guides as to where you would generally sit your device. So it doesn't say what the pricing is, but it looks like, you know, there's going to be some sort of battery that I guess you have to attach a battery to the iPad and then rest it on some inductive plate. Now, eventually, you know, we're going to be able to have this stuff built into the iPad or iPhone. So I don't know when this is coming out. Oh, it says here the dual device charge will be $90 and $35 for the case. So it's not that expensive. But look, if this technology is any good, Apple will probably develop it itself or buy Energizer. It has so much money, and build it in itself. So look, I'm looking forward to it if it really works. Application seems to be getting more and more into the iPad 2 or the iPad 1. And the latest story that broke this week is that the schools in Auburn, Maine will soon be getting iPads. And the story is that the school district is going to spend more than $200,000 on iPads. And that comes from Electronista.com. And, you know, it says that altogether they're buying 285 iPad 2s for each kindergarten teacher in the classrooms. And the program will begin as a pilot program in May with a full rollout at the beginning of next school year in the fall. And it says that the committee that governs the school district voted to spend about $200,000 on the iPads. And, you know, this is a school system in a small community with a population of around 25,000. So, look, I think this is a trend. And, you know, I already know that the principal of my son's school in New York, she told me that they're going to be investing in iPads. And, you know, it's big news. Here's a little, well, there's a video of the Auburn school system with kids using it. But it makes sense because iPads are just so children friendly. We know that. If you have a kid and they've been exposed to the iPad, you could see how intuitive, how easy it is. They just pick it up. They know how to navigate it. Touch interface is truly the future of computing. Now, one app that was already great on the iPad appears to have become even greater. According to Cult of Mac, the app called Stargazing, which goes, I guess, for $5. I'm sorry, the app called Starwalk, which goes for $5. It's an astronomy app, now has augmented reality. And what that means is you can hold up the iPad to the night sky and it will see, I guess, the stars that you're seeing, and then put an overlay over the stars, and that's augmented reality. Like, for example, it will show you, there's these different constellations, and like the Scorpius or Andromeda or Arius, and it'll show you the outline where the stars are. So I guess it can recognize the stars if it's not too bright, the night sky, and then it would analyze that and put an overlay over it. So it's pretty phenomenal, and I think we're going to see more of these augmented reality apps. At only $5, I'm tempted to buy the Starwalk app. Let's see. Actually, Starwalk's only it's only 99 cents until April 12th. Look, that's really cheap. So I'm gonna buy it. Here, watch me here on the iPad podcast. Just buy this app. Boom, 99 cents. It usually goes for $5, and it has this augmented reality in it. So you got to check it out. I'm checking it out. Okay, so there's some good news if you're looking for an iPad 2. It looks like, the waiting period now is definitely down to just 2 to 3 weeks. It had been as high as, 3 to 4 or 4 to 5 weeks, and we're just now down to 2 to 3 weeks. There is still a limit of 2 per order, but that's good news, and I wouldn't be surprised if in the coming months it's a shorter turnaround time. Okay, now I want to talk about some recommendations I made to an acquaintance or friend of mine at work who's extremely sick. He's extremely sick with cancer, and he's, I guess, at home, and people got him an iPad, and he's really thrilled with the iPad, and I understand it makes him very happy. And I was communicating with him, actually iPad to iPad. I sent him a video of me talking to him. And I said, look, I'd be happy to recommend apps that you might like on the iPad. And I was keeping in mind, he might be new to the iPad. So here's what I basically said to him. I just looked at all my apps, and this is what I said in terms of apps, recommending it to him. Because I have a lot of apps. I've been using the iPad for a year. And this is what came to mind for someone who's new. I said, here are the apps I really like on the iPad. Real Racing HD or Real Racing 2 HD. They are really great race car driving games where the iPad itself becomes a steering wheel. Then I added in Flipboard. This is a very cool free app that takes your social media and other news and RSS feeds and turns it into a magazine on the iPad that you can flip through. The Onion app. It is a free app of the Onion website, which is a humor website. The TED app. This is a free app that has all the free lecture videos from TED.com website. Multipong. This is a great rolling ball game that up to 4 people can play at the same time. Pinball HD. This is an amazing recreation of a pinball machine on your iPad. Netflix. If you have a Netflix account, this free app lets you and your family see thousands of movies and TV shows on your iPad. ABC News app. This is a free app that has lots of ABC News videos and news stories. GarageBand. This is a great music creation app on both the first and second generation iPad. Madden NFL. This is a fun football playing game. Doodle Buddy, a fun drawing and doodling app. Google Books and also Free Books app. Both apps give you access to loads of free books through the Project Guggenheim book service, which itself is free. Dragon Dictation, a free dictation voice recognition app that works through the cloud. You need to be connected to the internet when you use it. Bigger Words app. Now this is a cool app. It allows you to type a few words, which then are huge on the iPad. You can then hold up the iPad as a sign. The Duo Browser app allows you to browse 2 websites at one. That's Duo Browser. The Simon Says app is a free game app that is essentially Simon Says, and you press you try to match the buttons as they get incrementally harder. The Angry Birds app, it's a famous game, so you'll have fun with it. Magic Piano app, which is an interesting music app to play around with. And so that's, I had to come up quickly. I wanted to give him some recommendations. And so as I looked on my iPad where I have all these apps, these are the ones that came to mind, that I would recommend. So I hope he enjoys them, and I don't know if you've gotten any inspiration for these apps. Now, if you have an iPad 2 that works on the Verizon network, you might be having some problems. The Wall Street Journal's All Things Digital website reported on April 8th that Apple is investigating Verizon iPad 3G issues. And what the newspaper reported is that Apple is looking into reports that some users are having issues connecting their iPad 2 to Verizon's network. And there's a quote here that says, "We are aware that a small number of iPad 2 customers have experienced connectivity issues with the Verizon 3G network, and we are investigating it," quote, end quote, the company said in a statement to Mobilized. A Verizon representative did not immediately respond to requests for comment. And according to the newspaper, some 6 pages of comments are devoted to the issue on Apple's forum pages, with additional reports cropping up on many Apple enthusiast sites. So apparently, some people are finding difficulty getting a connection to Verizon. And the story says there are no issues about the iPad connecting with AT&T or on Wi-Fi. So only if you have a Verizon version of the iPad. So here's the Apple discussion forum, and there are some comments. This person writes, "Same issue as many others, Verizon 64 gigabyte. I had an extremely difficult time activating the 3G for the first time. Once connected, it worked fine. I no longer needed 3G at the end of the weekend, so I turned off cellular data. Today, I thought I would check to be sure there were no issues turning 3G back on. I spent more than 30 minutes trying to connect this afternoon. Often after turning on cellular data, nothing would happen. No searching, no nothing. Turning on airplane mode and turning it back off might get me searching, but no connection. Interestingly, turning off cellular data did not stop the searching. It was as if the iPad 2 did not know I turned off cell data. Several reboots with the iPad in different configurations, cell on, roaming off, Wi-Fi and cell on, etc., seemed to do nothing to help. My last attempt consisted of having cellular data with a reboot. For whatever reason, I connected to the 3G network. Now I fear once I reboot or turn off cell data, won't be able to connect again. There really does seem to be an issue here. I also have a first-gen AT&T iPad, which never has issues." So this is reported, I guess, by someone named Moban on March 29th. So, it appears, it makes sense because, Apple hasn't had Verizon, devices for that long. And so there might be some, bugs here and there. Who knows? Maybe there's a firmware bug that has to do with the Verizon. So, I'm sure Apple will have a fix or a patch or give you a new one if something's wrong. Okay, so in terms of Apple's competition for the iPad, there really isn't much active right now because the Zoom, the XOOM, that's how you spell it, tablet, I guess from Motorola, is barely selling. And there's really an interesting article, provocative even, from Tom's Guide, which is www.tomsguide.com. And the article is, what if the tablet is just an Apple phenomenon? And it's kind of provocative. The article comes out on April 8th by Wolfgang Gruner, and he writes, have we ever considered the likelihood that plain iPad copies can't be successful and are doomed to fail no matter how good they are? And he goes on to say, apparently executives at other companies did not, but there's a really good chance that a panicking PC industry is chasing money that does not exist. He goes on to say, I have to apologize to some of my friends in the analyst community for heavily criticizing them in this post, and the fact that forecasting new record number of tablet sales will grab headlines. Instead of telling you that the tablet industry will sell 389 super zillion tablets by 2015, I'm predicting, pin me down on that no manufacturer other than Apple will achieve substantial tablet sales numbers within the foreseeable time. And then he goes on to say, let's look at the facts so far. There was the Galaxy Tab and Motorola Zoom, which were put in direct competition to the iPad, and both bombed, despite an attractive feature set. We will soon get a new tab and soon the BlackBerry Playbook. The Playbook has interesting opportunity due to its BlackBerry platform, but it is unlikely to create the kind of waiting lines Apple is used to. Let's give the Playbook a shot, but if it flops as well, how many more failures do we need until we figure out that there is something inherently wrong with the concept of copying the iPad? So it's an interesting and kind of provocative story. And, I'm not sure if he's right. I do think Apple is creating a whole new type of computer industry with the iPad, and I do believe that it's way ahead of any competition. But I think eventually, there will be formidable competitors to iPad in the tablet area. So look, he goes on to give an explanation. He points out, for example, that the iPad was not really Apple's idea. He says the idea came from Alan Kay, who told Steve Jobs that he needs to build a larger version of the iPhone as a computing device to rule the world. Many of the features of the iPad have been described in Kay's 1972 Dynabook concept, which Jobs undoubtedly studied and used to create a vision of the iPad that would fit the Apple user and ecosystem. He goes on to say, since there is no company in the world that knows its customers better than Apple, Jobs and his team have a unique ability to tailor any product closely to the desired prospective buyers. Well, that's true. He has another section titled Good Copies, Bad Copies. Can there be a good copy of the iPad? Sure, he says, on the surface there could be good copies, but would they matter? Perhaps this entire tablet market is created based on Apple's sales performance and the vision that the overall IT market will merge with the Apple distortion field into an environment where you and I will go out and buy tablets at an obscene rate. If we look at the current executive firings at large IT companies, firings that are largely based on missed smartphone and tablet opportunities, you can only shake your head in disbelief. Is there any reason to believe that anyone will be able to sell at a rate Apple can? I haven't seen one credible reason yet. He's not really talking about how someone can beat Apple. He's just talking about the fact that people are losing to Apple now. He says, in the end, every tablet that follows the idea of Apple's tablet will be a bad copy. And there are plenty of signs that every effort to bring out his Q&D tablet will be a waste of time and money. If you are chasing a market that does not exist, why try to satisfy your own desire to be like Apple and risk the future of your company? Apple has an amazing run, but it wasn't always like that. In some ways, this article is just sort of all over the place. it's sort of circular. I mean, I like Apple, and I think Apple's winning, but I really don't understand this Tom'sGuide.com's analysis. The reason people are chasing Apple is because, Apple's selling so much in the iPad market that it's taking away from other computer markets like the netbook market, and companies like Hewlett Packard and Microsoft are petrified that the entire computer industry is going to become tablets. I mean, only in year one, Apple sold 15 million iPads. They're projected to sell 40 million this year. At this rate, Microsoft, Hewlett Packard, Dell, all these companies are petrified that if they don't enter into this field, everyday personal computers are going to become iDevices, whether they're an iPad or an iPhone or some really souped up iDevice that's very powerful that can replace, personal computers. So I think it's a provocative article, but I just don't think it has a lot of, I don't know. Okay, now this may sound like heresy, but I'm going to recommend that people check out Microsoft's new Bing for iPad app. And that's because, on April 7th, it got released, and it's like a major upgrade for Bing on the iPad. And it's the description of it is experience search that is truly designed for the iPad. Bing for iPad is here. And the features include swipe through our touch-enabled movie listings, news articles, trending topics, stay current with latest news. But, to give you a sense of why it's so good, here's an interesting article from Information Week. And what they say is Microsoft has rebuilt Bing, explicitly for the iPad, and went to extra lengths to take advantage of all the capabilities of the iPad. It says that the revised start page opens up with a quick view of what's going on. The search bar, which includes voice search, is at the top of the page. At least 3/4 of the page is consumed by Bing Photos. Along the bottom of the home screen, there's a strip of panels that show you the local weather, breaking news, headlines, maps, nearby movies, online trends, and stock markets. So people are reviewing it saying it's gotten very slick in its interface, and is really designed for the iPad. So it's free. I'm going to check it out. I haven't really played with it yet. But look, the beauty is you just click a button. I'm going to get it. Free app, Bing. And next week I'll take you more in depth to see if Apple's arch nemesis, Microsoft, has any sort of traction with the Bing for iPad app. Okay, now remember the Time Warner Cable iPad app that I discussed last week? Well, I'm still trying to get it to work because I have to find my Time Warner password and log in for my Time Warner Cable account, because that's how I activate it. It's free, but the concept is that when you're on your Wi-Fi, or I guess over even 3G, if you have it logged into your cable account, you're going to be able to get movie and TV streaming from the cable channels. Well, there was a huge, huge controversy because some of the networks that distribute over Time Warner Cable don't want their content streamed then over the iPad, saying that the licensing rights are not there. Well, Time Warner last week went into federal court to get a declaratory judgment, suing Viacom, which distributes some of the channels. And on Engadget, there's a report of this. And so Time Warner wants to basically say, look, if the customers are paying for the cable channels, then they have a right to get the feed over the iPad at no extra cost. And so Time Warner on, I guess, Friday, on the 7th of April, filed in the Southern District of New York for a declaratory judgment regarding Viacom's cable networks. And Time Warner continues that its carriage agreements give it the right to allow subscribers access on any screen in their home, not just the TV, and it seeks to prove this in court, or at least drive Viacom, Discovery, and Fox and the other complaining networks towards more favorable negotiations. Now, Time Warner added 7 additional channels earlier that day because Viacom had pulled some channels. Now, Viacom responded to Time Warner by saying, quote, Time Warner had, quote, blatantly grabbed the rights that their competitors have negotiated in good faith to obtain, forcing it to file a lawsuit of its own. So Viacom then sued Time Warner back. So this is all about the rights of further distributing content, and in some ways what Time Warner is doing is similar to what Amazon is doing, creating an online digital locker that people can then stream their music from. So we'll have to see how this plays out. I mean, what Time Warner did is good for consumers because it will give us more choice on our iPad. Now, a lot of people have speculated that the earthquake in Japan and the tsunami and the nuclear problems and all those problems in Japan will affect the supply of iPad 2s and Apple's bottom line in selling iPad 2s. But the financial publication Barron's had a story on April 7th reporting on what a financial analyst had reported, and the title is Apple Q2 Steady If Unspectacular, says Think Equity. And so Think Equity analyst Rajesh Ghia wrote that Apple is likely to have, quote, steady though unspectacular Q2 when it reports later this month. And he reiterated a buy rating on Apple shares. Now, here's the interesting things in terms of the Japan problem. Ghia expects Apple's control of the supply chain is probably already helping the company. And he's quoted as saying, Apple has already booked approximately 60% of the total available touch panel capacity. While some reports have stated that Apple will be facing component shortages for iPad resulting from the Japanese earthquake, Hon-Hai, Apple's primary manufacturing source, has stated that it does not expect any component shortages and alternate suppliers have been lined up. So what this suggests is that Apple will in fact not have any shortages of iPad 2s in production, which is good for those still waiting to get iPad 2s as well as people who have invested in Apple. Okay, so if you're into sports and you like your iPad, you might have checked out, the Masters iPad app. Now, the Masters, of course, is a famous golf tournament, and it was on CBS this past weekend. And apparently, I didn't even know they had this app, but here it sounds like a really amazing app, and I think we're going to see more and more like this. Now, the app only costs $1.99, and it features live broadcast of the Masters, but it also has 4 other streams with live commentaries, and 2 streams follow feature groups, one which is the golfer Mickelson, and 2 more were fixed at popular spots on the Augusta National Course. And it works not just on Wi-Fi, but 3G connections. Now, the other cool thing is that it has a second screen. So basically, it looks like you can have, a real-time leaderboard, which is integrated with the video highlights, and then you watch the game or you might watch the golf on TV. So, it looks like a very interesting second screen experience. And what this blog, Lost Remote, says is that the the app is a perfect second screen experience. He says that the only thing missing with the Masters app is social media integration. I guess, if you want to tweet folks or follow Twitter comments about the Masters. But look, I think every sporting event is going to have a companion app coming out at the same time. It's not just going to be the major sports like football and baseball. I think we're going to see every sport have all sorts of iPad-enabled apps coming out. Okay, so one of the most futuristic stories that came out about the iPad this week is something that patently Apple had found. And patently Apple goes through patent filed by Apple looking for stuff for the future. And one thing for the future is that Apple is working or has a document filed called Systems and Methods for Switching Between an Electronic Paper Display and a Video Display. So look, I'll give you the bottom line here. Apple's working on technology that would allow the screen of an iPad to go from being an LCD screen to an e-ink screen and back and forth, and to basically have different quadrants of the screen switch between e-ink and LCD based on the content. Now, why is this significant? Because, for reading books, Apple's main competitor is the Amazon Kindle, and the Kindle is e-ink. And the advantages of e-ink are that it doesn't use much power, and it doesn't use any backlighting, so that it works with natural light. So that means it can last a long time without any charging, a month maybe. And also in bright sunlight, you can read it easier than you can an LCD screen like the iPad. The downside of e-ink is that you can't really watch videos or play, video type games or have a lot of interactivity and it's not a touch screen, the e-ink Surface. So Apple is seeking to marry both worlds and is working on technology to have e-ink as well as LCD. And, that's good news, because I think, one of the vulnerabilities that Apple has is in the area of just pure reading of books, because people do like to occasionally read a book outdoors while like sunning themselves and sitting on a lounge chair or going to the beach. And in bright sunlight, just pure LCD screens aren't really good for book reading. So we'll have to see if this is the type of technology that Apple develops, or is it going to come out with some other type of screen that has the best of both worlds. Okay, so another provocative article concerning the iPad comes on the Salon.com website. And the article is entitled, "When Gadgets Betray Us, the Danger in That iPad." And the subtitle is, "The gizmos we so love can unwittingly leak important security information. An expert explains what you should know." And the article really is a follow-up to the story that the United States Attorney's Office in New Jersey is investigating how some apps on Android or iDevices are collecting information about us secretly, such as location, device type, and selling it to advertisers. Particularly, there's an investigation into the Pandora app. But this is a pretty sensational article, and actually it's kind of funny that I came across it, because right before I came across it, I was talking to a friend of mine who's a computer geeky kind of guy, and we were talking about why I think there is some hesitation in enterprise and that means by enterprise big companies, to embrace the iPad. And I just think a lot of it has to do with the momentum of a lot of IT departments. People are schooled in Microsoft computers and they're trained in that, and they don't want to embrace new technology. And my friend was saying, well, these devices, they're security threats. And so that's what this article is about. And my friend was saying, well, look, on these Android devices and the iPhone, you don't know what a lot of these what are these apps, what kind of information they're collecting. But you know what? I say, how do you know that all the programs that you have on laptops, how do you know they're not sending information home? Yeah, they don't have cell phones embedded into them and GPS, but they do connect to the internet. And, there is location data when you connect anytime to the internet through any internet connection. So anyways, this I think what's going on is a lot of people, they're looking for attention. So they'll work the iPad into any sort of headline. But I don't think that the iPhone or the iPad are any more dangerous than any other programs. And what people forget is there's just all this malware and, security risks on Windows computers. And people forget about that, and instead they're talking about how data is being taken, from iPhones and iPads. In this article, the writer from Salon, the writer is Jacob Sugarman. He interviews someone who wrote a book called When Gadgets Betray Us, and that guy is Robert Vamosi, who researched a new book which offers a revealing look, supposedly, at the dark underbelly of our rapidly advancing electronics. So, look, this guy's trying to sell books, so he's obviously going to be writing something that tries to scare people. But I don't find the iPad to be scary. What I find to be scary are these crappy Windows computers and laptops that have malware and every type of, junky software that comes through your browser when you're just sitting at your desk. And if anything, the Apple Store and the App Store for the iPad and the iPhone, provide an additional layer of security. You're never going to be completely, risk-free with any electronic device, but I don't think we should be scared into not buying iDevices by this hysteria that there's going to be all this data collected on us. Now, how are people using iPads? Well, CrunchGear, a reputable website, has an article on April 10th entitled, "Is Anyone Else Shocked That Tablets Are Used Mainly for Gaming?" And the article leads off by saying that Google's AdMob recently did a survey regarding how people are using tablets, and it says that more people are using tablets for gaming. So here are the survey results. It says that 84% of the people who use the tablet device, which has to be an iPad, obviously, for playing games, 78% for searching for information, 74% for emailing, 61% for reading the news, 56% for social networking, 52% for consuming music or movies, 46% for reading books. Now, I mean, that doesn't mean they're better gaming devices. It could mean that the people have a more propensity, people who buy iPads maybe have more propensity for playing games than they do for reading books. That totally makes sense if you think about it. Less people in society read as many books as they did before. But obviously, the iPad is a great gaming device. I mean, I find myself playing real racing HD2 all the time now because it's such a great platform. So CrunchGear says, what does this mean? In addition to the results above, the survey found that 82% of tablet owners are using their tablets at home, 62% at night, a perfect time for recreation. So you'd expect tablet usage on the weekend to also be high, but 69% of respondents said that they use their tablets more during the weekday. I kind of see that, because a lot of the people maybe who buy iPads are young, and maybe they go out at night and are more active on weekends. And so maybe it's during the week when they come home from work that they're using the iPad. So the article goes on to say that the majority would say that the tablets are just big toys for kids. It goes on to say that only 28% have entirely replaced their primary computer with a tablet. Okay, well, that makes sense. Well, first of all, people who get the iPad initially are going to be big techno people to begin with. And so big techno people are going to have a computer, and they're not going to go whole hog and just replace their computer. But over time, I could see a lot of people who really don't have a computer getting an iPad. Another section is entitled, "Should Nintendo Be Worried?" And they say, to answer simply, they are. The first showing was Nintendo's bashing of garage developers. The big trick is Nintendo has to convince you to buy their game system. Apple doesn't. Apple was able to sell 15 million iPads last year as a first-gen device. That's a good point by CrunchGear. You know, the problem other gaming companies have, as CrunchGear notes, is that, you know, with the iPad, you don't have to buy the iPad just for gaming. The iPad is also a computer, it's a browser, it's a camera now. It's a movie camera. It's a, you know, it can do all these different things, and by the way, it can be a game, and the games don't cost that much. Now with Nintendo, I have to go out and buy a dedicated hardware device and then pay a lot of money for the software beyond what games cost on the iPad. So look, it's you know, CrunchGear makes very good points about how the iPad is used and the future of gaming. Now, according to the Wall Street Journal, more magazines are coming to the iPad. In an article entitled "More Magazines Try iPad," the Wall Street Journal reports that Bloomberg Businessweek will start selling subscriptions to an iPad version of its magazine for $2.99 a month on Monday, joining Elle and Maxim magazine among a small but growing number of magazines willing to sign on, despite industry-wide concerns about Apple's reluctance to share customer data. So, you know, it's interesting because a lot of publishers are totally pissed off that Apple is taking a 30% cut of subscriptions. So here are publications that have signed on to Apple's subscription service or intend to, according to the Wall Street Journal. Bloomberg Businessweek at $2.99 a month. Elle magazine at $2.99 a month, or $18.99 a year. The Daily, that's Rupert Murdoch's daily newspaper, at 99 cents a week, or $40 a year. Popular Science at $14.99 a year. There's no pricing on Maxim. Publishers that have not agreed to terms with Apple include Time Inc., so none of Time's people, Sports Illustrated, Condé Nast, Vogue, New Yorker, Vanity Fair, and Hearst. So it's divided. Frankly, you know, these prices look pretty good. The Bloomberg Businessweek rate of only $3 a month, that comes to $36 a year. Is that right? Yeah, 3 times 12, $36 a year. That's pretty reasonable. I mean, that's a pretty comparable to what you would pay for a paper subscription. So, you know, I think we're going to see more and more magazines cave to the Apple subscription model. Now, if you got an iPad 2 and you think that the cases for the iPad 2 are somewhat limited, well, things are starting to get interesting as new cases come out for the iPad 2. And one of the most interesting things to come out is an iPad 2 case with Bluetooth keyboard built inside. And this is called the Logitech Zaggmate Keyboard case for the iPad 2. And so it looks kind of metallic, and it looks like it protects your iPad while offering a stand and keyboard at the same time. And it's going to ship on April 19th. And it has an aluminum case stand which you can stand up your iPad to in either portrait or landscape mode, and it has a keyboard and rechargeable keyboard via USB, which pairs up with your iPad versus Bluetooth. Now it's going to retail for $100, and there are cheaper stands, but this one, looks to have three things: a stand, a keyboard, and a case, in one attractive package. Now, what's nice, if you look at this picture, the aluminum. See, these are all the different. Let's go back to it. Okay, so this is looking at it in back, and it looks very handsome. I'm tempted to get one. I mean, I paid what, $70 for the leather smart case, but this looks really kind of striking, and it goes with the silver look of the aluminum of the iPad. And you can orient it, looks like, both in horizontal portrait mode and landscape mode. I don't know. This Zag case is kind of striking. If the quality in the build is good, I think a lot of people are going to buy it, even if it's $100. Okay, so an industry is born when magazines start popping up to cover your industry. And one industry which seems to be born is the iPad gaming industry, because word is out now that there is a magazine devoted to iPad gaming only. And according to this website, theappera.com, Area 5 has launched the first iPad-only gaming magazine called Atomix Mag. And I guess the magazine, obviously is sold through the iPad. And each issue is priced at 99 cents. And I guess what it does is it covers games that are on the iPhone and the iPad. So it's kind of interesting. A magazine delivered on the iPad that discusses iPad games. So we'll have to check it out. Again, it's by Area 5, the Atomix for iPad. There's a little movie here. Let's see what it...
Hi, this is Atomix, the first video game magazine designed specifically for the iPad.
So
each left and right swipe takes you to a whole article.
It looks like a video. It
Each
looks like a
story is contained
magazine
entirely
for the
in up and down
iPad,
motion.
and
We take advantage
very
of your
similar
iPad's
to the
features
other
in order to make
magazines we
sure that
saw.
Atomix is an experience
So we'll
you
have
can't
to
get.
check it out. Okay, now I don't know if this is a gag or not, but the website china.globatimes.cn claims that one of China's government agencies, the State Council Information Office, has launched a free program for the iPad. And it basically says that you can download the app. It sounds like it's an iPad app on Apple's website at apple.com.cn. I guess that's the China version of the app. So I looked in the App Store and I couldn't find anything from the State Council Information Office. But the article basically says that this is a bilingual iPad app. So that would be something about Apple going global with the iPad if the government of China starts releasing iPad apps. The article says, the iPad format is no big deal, said one scholar. It quotes somebody named Zhai Zhulun at Peking University, sociologist, who says, by using high-tech products, it will attract more people to know and discuss the government's policies. And then he goes on to say, under public supervision and participation, the government will discover its problems over time and overcome bureaucracy. So who knows? Who knows if this Chinese government iPad app has been released? I'm going to continue to look for it. Okay, so if you're into a somewhat innovative app, you might want to check out an app called the Jetsetters app. And I guess it's by a website and service called Jetsetters.com, which is a members-only travel website that is part of New York-based high-end online retailer, the Jilt Group. And they're launching a new iPad app that has an interesting twist. You can have a 360-degree seamless photo display that allows customers to immerse themselves within the company's resort partner properties. So this Jetsetter website, I guess, exposes you to high-end resorts, and the app will allow you to have a 360-degree photo experience on the app. And there's a little video that shows you how that works. And I guess the app is
So the first thing you
free.
see when you open the app is this 360-degree screen.
It's kind of cool. It is kind of virtual reality.
Designed it to look like
You know,
magazine
because
cover, but,
we've all
it's
seen these
actually interactive.
360
The analogy
views
uses
on
it's
websites on a
like a
computer,
turntable.
but when you do
So you can
360
spin it back,
on the
but then it'll
iPad,
always
it's so
just start
intuitive.
rotating in that
And the
direction.
video
It just
here
sort of
that
pans
they're
around the
showing
room.
on the
You
Wired.com
can look around it,
website
and this
is kind of
360-degree
cool
technology
because
is
it's almost
something
like you're
we
looking
use
in a
just all over the
window
application.
through the iPad, and
It's
you're
the best
just
looking 360
rotating
degree
360
you'll see
around a
on any
room.
website, any
You know, and
application.
I would say that this is kind of
It's just really
very
beautiful.
cool app,
Works
one
in
of the coolest
landscape.
things I've seen.
And you get a random line every
And
time you
I
open
think
the
a lot of
application.
people who are
It's
going to be
just-
selling real
I
estate
think
should
it
do
sets the
something like
stage for what
this,
the application is
because
about,
really
and
it
that's
turns your iPad into
photography
a
and being
window
inspired by travel. So
to
then,
see into
you know, once you're
like
ready,
a property.
tap to enter,
So,
and
you
you're
know,
actually inside the
it's a great way to
application. So
sell real
at the
estate
top,
or
we've got,
resorts.
our list
And,
of flash sales
you know,
and
I think
other
we should all
just
check it
featured
out.
properties that are
Particularly,
available, and you can pan through
I
them.
think the app is free.
in this case.
Let's check it out. Well, sure enough, the Jetsetter app is free, and basically it allows you to browse through all these properties that Jetsetter.com is hooked in with, and you know, everything from Kenyan safaris to Mediterranean cruises. You can see all sorts of 5-star boutique hotels and spas. And, you know, I'm going to check this out because that video really does show you tremendous viewing. Okay, so again, this has been Max Future's iPad podcast on April 10th, 2011. Please feel free to leave a voicemail. Any questions, any comments at 617-826-9676, or send an email to maxfuture@gmail.com. And again, it's been a crazy time in iPad land, and see you next week.